Boy meets girl, no, cute girl meets cute girl and falls in love. Mainly popular in the shoujo genre, romance and relationships between girls have been getting more mainstream attention, and series filled with adorable and clumsy first love follow the sweet and sassy in their cuteness, drama, and misunderstandings, starting new friendships, discovering more in old ones, and realizing who they are and who. Furtado is an action game and a top-down shooter. You play the role of a potato with up to 6 weapons to kill as many bad guys as you can. The weapons auto-fire while you aim manually. Enemy waves last up to a minute and a half, and you keep yourself upgraded to keep ahead of the stronger and stronger enemies. The game plays well, and it currently sits atop the Google Play charts for top paid action games. Curiously, the free version is still in pre-registration, so this game isn't fully launched yet. You can only get the premium version right now. Heigen Aerdale is a mobile RPG with anime-inspired graphics. It's also a gacha, and it plays like one. You collect characters, level them, and use them to progress through the game. The combat is flashy and fun, with tons of animations to make things seem a lot more intense than they really are. At its core, this is a pretty standard gacha RPG. The story is alright, although some folks had some trouble following it, and the main character is fairly stereotypical. However, aside from some small issues like that, the game is pretty decent. Honkai Star Rail is one of the biggest mobile game releases in 2023 so far. It's a gacha RPG by the same developers as Genshin Impact. There are quite a few differences between the games, though. Star Rail is turn-based, and it isn't open world. That said, the developer's penchant for storytelling is alive and well here, and the game's presentation and soundtrack are excellent. It works well, even on phones that don't have flagship specs, provided you set the graphical settings a bit lower. In any case, the combat is fairly typical but still fun. The enjoyable aspect of this is the overall experience, which is a few steps higher than your standard gacha. Fu Saga is an MMORPG and a pretty typical one for mobile phones. It features a large world, tons of things to do, and fairly simple controls. You can also summon companions to help you out along the way, join guilds, and do boss battles together. It looks nice and worked well on my test device. The only downside is how often the game plays itself. Most of the stuff in the game is autocomplete. That includes dialogue boxes, which has caused a lot of players to pull back because they can barely read what's on the screen before it disappears. It definitely needs some work, but if the developers can turn off all of the auto stuff and slow down the dialogue a bit, this could shape up to be a nice game. The Oregon Trail Boomtown is a town-building simulator with some very light survival elements from the original game. For the most part, players focus on building a city where they produce goods, farm crops, and do other things to fulfill requests made by the other townspeople. There is some trailblazing, but it's not the focal point of the game, but it is still there. It's very reminiscent of games like Heyday, so fans of the genre already know what's going on. As per the norm, players are limited by things like barn space, which is a bummer. There are also some early bugs the developers still haven't figured out yet. Otherwise, it's not bad. Star Equestrian is a simulation game where you race and compete with horses. The story goes that you lost your horse, and after some time, you strike out to find him. You can explore the game world, take part in competitions, and progress through the story. It's a fun concept, although the game does need some optimization. The game played fine on our test phones, but some folks with older or lower tier devices have issues with lag and stuttering. We also recommend steering clear of the online multiplayer until some optimizations are made. Even so, there's enough to do that you can keep yourself busy while the developer hopefully works on those fixes. Subway Surfers Blast is a Match 3 game similar to most other Match 3 games. You line up the various shapes to remove them from the board and continue that loop until you complete the level. There are some Subway Surfer elements in here as well, such as cameos from the characters, along with Subway Surfer-themed collectibles and power-ups. It's an excellent example of a modern Match 3. The game played quite well, and we don't have any real complaints about it. It is a large departure from the regular Subway Surfers, though, and some fans may not like the slower gameplay versus the famous Endless Runner. The Tale of Food is a mobile gacha game with restaurant simulator elements. The gacha element includes collecting male characters with food names. There is also a restaurant for players to manage, satisfying the restaurant simulator part of the game. For the gacha RPG side of things, you get some standard turn-based combat with your characters, along with a story to play through. The world looks nice, and there are plenty of things to do. The main difference between this and many gacha RPGs is that most of the characters you can summon are men. This is in stark contrast to most JRPG gachas, where the majority of the cast are women. In terms of pure mechanics, it's solid and actually fun. Fuck. The Beasts of Burden is a new game from Square Enix. It's inspired by tabletop RPGs where you defeat monsters, trap them in cards, and then use the cards to summon those same monsters during combat. The whole game takes place in a board game-like environment, which gives it a unique look and feel. Even the combat looks like a card duel versus some flashier combat from other games released this month. In fact, it's not overly flashy at all. What you get here is excellent storytelling and presentation, as you generally expect from a Square Enix game. The game costs $12.99 as of this writing, but, luckily, doesn't include any in-app purchases to ads to mess things up. Worms WMD Mobilize is the latest Worms release on mobile. It plays mostly like the other Worms games. You drop your worms on the battlefield and strategically move them to attack your opponent. The game includes a variety of weapons to use for this endeavor. Also included are 10 training missions, 20 campaign missions, and online multiplayer. Yes, this is something you can probably finish in a few days. However, it's also a premium game with no in-app purchases, so you get the whole game with one purchase. The controls and some gameplay elements are a little flaky, so we hope the developers tune some stuff. Otherwise, it's just as fun as the other Worms games. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video was helpful.